Thanks to Andy. Andy has gave us a lot of examples of big data and its application and in many other sectors. Forecasting the weather, trying to generate more sales in a retail environment. I'm going to pull back this a little bit narrower into the telco context. So you all have heard a lot about the big data. One thing you may have not been concerned about is the cost of storing those data and the cost to process those data. The costs easily go up to in a grade of tens of millions US dollars. Last year, I was engaged in a consulting project with a telco vendor, with a telco service provider, to look at the investment they have made into a big data warehouse and try to bring out what's the value, what's the return. So big data is a lot of cost. From business point of view, what we all should be concerned about are the return. And Andy also mentioned the techniques to process this data, which is broadly referred as analytics. So in the following presentation, I'm going to give some examples of analytics and its application in the customer experience. So much has been said about the big data. Why customer experience? So let's look at what's happening with the telco service providers environment today. And to what extent can you see the telcos in your mobile phone? When you pull up your iPhone or Android, I think the presence of the service provider become very little. You may left with a short message icon plus the phone button, or you may argue the signal bar on top come from the service provider. Besides that, most of the icons don't. They either come from the phone maker or come from the OTT application providers. The service layers for telco service provider, ironically, are diminishing. The second point here is that the users embraces the social network, which create a huge impact in the word-of-mouth marketing. So I see a lot of gentlemen, when you buy a car, how many of you don't ask your friend and go straight and buy a car of your favor? Raise your hand, please. And how many of you do ask your friend or check out the comments from others from the internet environment? Raise your hand. Good. Okay. Sorry, I apologize for not asking the ladies. I was about to asking another question to ladies. How many of you who ask your friends for comments or search the comments on the internet when you purchase a perfume or a facial lotion? Please raise your hand. Good, thank you. All right, so what's left with the service provider is the very narrow touch of the few interaction with the users. So service providers have to think in another way to nurture this relationship with all the consumers, with all the mobile users. And the customer experience is embraced as a strategy to differentiate their offering. So let's just think about the Singapore environment. So there are a few operators. One of them thought about, I want to be always the most reliable service provider. So everything they do when they build the network, optimize the network, offer you a service, they want to be the most reliable. So that's a differentiator. while another operator tends to focus on another more energetic, younger generation. And the spirit of another operator here is to give you more fun. So all of the activity this service provider does, the second provider I mentioned here, is trying to inject the fun element into that experience building. So customer experience become important differentiator for the service providers. How are big data being used in the telco environment? No doubt there's a huge amount of data every day. All your voice call, your data, your image, or your postings, your searches go through your mobile, through the telco network. There's a lot of data. And big data is not new to the telco industry. But there are new elements and new applications employing this data which were untapped before. So I illustrate into the light brown color. So one of the areas is the customer experience management, which try to correlate all the interactions between you as a mobile user with all the channels. When did you go to the shop? When did you surf the web? Did you get the real information that you want? And if you call up the call center within 20 minutes after the search, that well mean you probably have not get the information from the website. So that's an example of collating the data across multiple channels. And the other light brown boxes here is to collect the voice of customer through social networks. And these comments are largely in the free text. It takes the machine intelligence to decode your emotion and categorize your comments, whether you're happy or you made a positive comments or you find that service provider not doing well enough to serve you in certain aspect. So there are other examples of voice recognition. When you call up the hotline, do you remember when did you raise up your voice? When your voice gets higher and higher, the analytics capability tells your emotion also rise up and categorize this. There might be a service problem that has been troubling you. So these are the new frontier, new area of big data application. Not to forget the blue boxes here. So there are the service quality management in order to offer higher level of quality. And there's the offer optimization to give you the next best offer, or to give you the data packages, the pricing plans that best suit your needs. For example, your data consumption has exceeded your monthly quota in the last 2 or 3 months. And the portion exceeding that quota can be a little more costly than the data bytes in that quota. So the offer optimization from the service provider perspective want to give you maybe the next tier or maybe the next second tier of data package that best suits your usage habits. Right. So big data applications or analytics is also widely used in customer retention. Out of the millions of subscribers who have the highest possibility to switch, and what has gone wrong with this relationship between you and the service provider, and what can be done, whether it's an incentive offer or whether it's a caring call to you directly. That's the application of customer retention. A lot of efforts are put in the planning of the network, optimizing the network, which I'm going to drill down a little more, and the precision campaign. when you are here, right here in Marina Bay Sands, and if you receive an offer to have a 3-day stay in this grand hotel next to us with a fraction cost of the usual price, would you take it? The usual price is $420, the minimum, for a hotel room in the Marina Bay Sands Hotel. And if you are offered $250 here, how many of you would like to take up that offer? Great. So that's a precision campaign based on where you are and the context of your mobility. With that, many new business models has been developed. StarHub VP of Digital Services shared in another conference earlier yesterday to talk about how they use the big data to enable the tourism in Singapore. They offered the crowd map to Sentosa management. And the interesting part is the area the foreigner likes to go is quite different from the local Singaporean likes to go in Sentosa. And another application is that when the crowd builds up in certain area, the management of Sentosa Island will dispatch more shuttle bus to that area so as to cater for the distribution of the people flow. Right? So that's a new business model. I'm not sure how much StarHub charge for tourism board of Sentosa Island. So similarly, StarHub also offered the services to Orchard Business Council to benefit the merchants, the fashion chains in the Orchard Road. So I'm sure StarHub will make a new revenue out of that offering. So that's a new business model out of the telco data. So to zoom back just a little bit into the application of big data in customer experiences, I'm going to cover 3 areas. One is the measurement of customer experience. Second is optimizing that experience and how it can be used in a migration and retention to higher or newer technologies, for example, from 3G to 4G network. It has been desired to understand the experience of all users. So I bet many of you, as marketing practitioners, will go out to survey the end users. But how many % of users can you reach in general? Would you reach 1% in a survey of Singapore population? Can anyone give a figure? Okay, let me give you one figure. In Singapore, the population, if I assume, is 5 million. In order to achieve an accuracy or probability of 95% of confidence, you need to survey 384 people. Having said that, surveying 384 people is already a lot of effort. But you could apply that surveyed result into an analytics model and use that model to apply to other users. So you have a panoramic overview of the experience of other users. And with that, you have a better view of who are the users suffering from service quality and where the coverage or capacity need to be further enhanced. So this is how it's actually done through the Huawei technology and the software. There's a mobile agent. Agent basically means software here, which could be loaded into your phone. And you could perform the interesting things like speed testing or delay testing by yourself. Or if you're not a technical guy, just don't care about it. But when you finish a call, you could be asked the question about to what level are you satisfied with the quality Or when you finish a data browsing session, after you're visiting some website, you will be asked about your satisfaction with that mobile broadband data. At the same time, some of the actual measurements in terms of the data throughput, in terms of the delay, are captured by the software agent running inside the phone. And these two feeds of data can be uploaded into a central data warehouse, of course, with your consent. So usually this is rolled out with the end user's consent to participate into a quality study, right? So that your privacy is protected. And what we saw here in one of the case studies is that there's a correlation, there's a relationship between the data speed you get and the satisfaction level of the user. The horizontal matrix axis here is the delay from the time you press the button on your phone to the time that you get a page from a web server. And the vertical axis is the percentage of dissatisfied user with a particular delay. So if we plot a lot of samples along this matrix, we see an inflection point occurring here, which is 780 milliseconds. So what does that mean? It has profound technical as well as business implications. From technical perspective, if the page browsing delay is shorter than 0.7 seconds, you will barely notice it. Even that is shortened, improved, it doesn't help to improve your satisfaction. However, if it does go longer than that inflection point, then your satisfaction levels start to decline, down, 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 down. So that's the technical explanation. But the business implication here is how much the service provider has to invest into the mobile network. How much capacity, how much bandwidth in the international gateway or submarine cable has to spend the money. How much investment has to be spent in order to give the coverage in Marina Bay Sands area, in the Kampong, in Sembawang area, which is northern part of Singapore. That investment can be well different. By the same methodology, we have developed the models and identified inflection points for different services, including voice, short messages, the instant messengers, how much delay would you tolerate when you get a response, as well as streaming. How long would you like to wait until a video buffer itself and begin to display? So these are the different services. And the KQI means the key quality indicators of users' concern. So to a certain extent, many users actually don't care about the throughput. What you really care, or what I really care, is how fast do I get a page. That's all I know, right? So key quality indicator is the indicator which impact your experience most. Then there's the threshold, which is the inflection points in another word. So some of the figures are displayed on this page. So this is how it's done through an analytical analysis. And the software agent I mentioned earlier is called the M2, as it has got a dual capability of measuring the objective numbers, the throughput, the delay, objective measurement, as well as the subjective satisfaction level. So that's how it's named as M2. And M2 gives the data feeds. These data goes into the SCQ, which is a data warehouse platform. Through that, we analyze the per services, per user experience, and build a model, CE modeling, build a model, analytical model, so as to analyze the inflection points and derive the quality of experience score. So every user could be rated with the quality of experience score, as opposed to very limited survey of 384 people. Right? So all 5 million or more than 5 million people, after your call or internet browsing session, there is a quality indicator can be generated out of that. So that's the part of the measurement. Now, how do we improve it? And the traditional approach is based upon the utilization. When you open up your computer, sometimes you feel the computer is running slow. What you tend to check is the utilization, the CPU time, or the memory space, or hard disk, etc. Right? So that's the traditional approach. Now, from the telco network point of view, what matters is how the user sees. So the methodology brings out very annoyed person who did not get sufficient level of service quality from the network, and try to bring them back into a geographical perspective. And in this map, the red area, the red dot area, illustrates the areas where have most the people suffering from data browsing or other services, while the yellow data points are the traditional approach. So there's a basic difference here. The yellow dot point is how the network sees the user, but the red dot signals how the end user sees the network. And it's quite different. It's quite different. Again, it has got a profound impact on how operators has to invest. If you go by the traditional approach, you may well be investing in areas which doesn't hit most of the suffer subscribers. But if you prioritize the red area, where have most number of subscribers suffering, that investment brings more return out of the capacity expansion. Right? So you get more data traffic into that area. You get better customer satisfaction go out of that additional investment. The data inside the network also give us the information or the insight in customer migration or retention. So I pull up a real example here, which comes from a project that we executed in Indonesia. So the 4G network has been rolled out in the central Jakarta area. Now, the question from the service provider is, who is my target customer to bring them on into the new technology? So we capture the network data, and we see who are the users. And in this circle, the outer circle, what you can see on the right-hand side start from the high traffic users, which represent about 12%. So that 12% could be the prospective users that you want to promote your LTE services package. And the next two yellow and light brown bar, or the pies, illustrate other interesting issues happening. On the yellow area, it shows that actually some of the users who already have a 3G or LTE phone, but he doesn't have the LTE contract, that 4%, right? So the end user has bought an LTE capable phone, but he hasn't had the LTE subscription. So these are the users probably the service provider should reach out first so that they don't need to subsidize a new phone to the user. And the next little pie of device limitation is equally interesting. That's actually about some of the 3G users who have a 3G contract, however, who keeps on using the 2G network. So what happened to them? What happened to them? And it was found out that some of them actually are the good parents. When they get a 3G phone, they just pass that to the next generation and they continue to use their old legacy candy bar type of phone, right? And there's also a next pie of device setting issues. Device setting issues. So there's a chunk of user who just lock themselves into the 2G network, even when they're using iPhone. So what's the reason behind that? So some of the customer services staff call up the users. Why did you lock your phone into 2G? Did you notice it? And the answers were quite interesting, because they were concerned about the battery draining. So they locked themselves into the 2G layer so as to conserve the battery. And from marketing point of view, guess what is the next action? So what this service provider did is, usually you get some free handphone, but what these users, these 4% of the users got is a free battery bank, so as to encourage them to use of the data service at 3G layer, which consumes a little more energy. All right. So these are examples how the data in the network could be used to make the next best offer and bring up the user experience. And here is another area of the common marketing practice in predicting churn and try to retain the prospective users. And non-price factors which drive its churn, of course, price is one of the important factors, but those factors who are not related to price are plotted onto this bar. And as you can see, these 5 factors are the handset, the packages, the reliability of the services, the customer services, as well as the coverage. But how to take the action out of this? The usual approach heavily rely on the business support system, or in a more layman terms, is the billing system. Billing system give us limited information that illustrated into the yellow ticks. So what you see here, the billing system tells what package you're using. It tells when did you call the customer services, or this actually comes from a CRM system, all right? But it doesn't accurately tell what device you're using. Perhaps it captures the device you got when you sign up the services, but very likely you have changed the mobile after 3 months. So the rest of the data, however, are all available from the network, So which are illustrated into the green ticks. It included the most updated information of your device model, the reliability of the services, which were discussed in the few slides earlier. And they also have very good information about the coverage in the area that you have traversed. So with this additional information, the churn prediction accuracy was improved by 18%. Not only that, that model tells which driver impact the tendency to switch operator most. Sometimes even you receive a promotional offer, you don't want to stay because the coverage really is bad in your health area. You don't get the full bar or you get very slow web browsing. With that, we improve the retention success ratio as well. And here is why, from psychological point of view. The usual practice, look at the behavior. The business billing system detects the declining usage or the recharge frequency, based on which the tendency to churn is predicted. However, it might be too late. Because when the usage starts to decline, that means the user has already decided in his heart to use another mobile or another SIM card more. Or the user has, if he has only one mobile, he has decided to take up another SIM card. That's the reason that usage with your SIM card has declined. So the golden period is before the user makes up a decision, which is signaled by the yellow boxes, OSS and BSS data together. So the takeaway here is that experience decides the attitude. The attitude affected user behavior, and the behavior impact the business outcome in terms of the revenue, in terms of the profit. So with that, I end my presentation.